In 1997, a 50-year-old man from Hawaii walked into every major publishing house in America with a book about money. Every single one said no. Barnes & Noble refused to put it on the shelves, so he printed it himself, sold copies out of his car at seminars nobody came to. His name was Robert Kiyosaki. That book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It would go on to sell over 40 million copies, be translated into 51 languages, sit on the New York Times bestseller list for over 6 years. But here's the part they leave out. Before that book, the man who teaches the world about money had already gone bankrupt twice. He'd been living in the back of an old Toyota with his girlfriend. He had nothing left. And in the WTF moment, you'll learn that his sister is a Buddhist nun ordained by the Dalai Lama, and that the son of Hawaii's superintendent of education almost got expelled from high school for terrible grades. Because being broke, for Robert Kiyosaki, was never the end of the story. It was the tuition.
Robert Teru Kiyosaki, born April 8, 1947 in Hilo, Hawaii, fourth-generation Japanese-American. Over 26 books, 40 million copies of Rich Dad, Poor Dad sold worldwide, 51 languages, 109 countries. New York Times bestseller list for over 6 years, PBS Excellence in Education Award, Amazon Hall of Fame top 25 authors. Vietnam War helicopter gunship pilot, Air Medal recipient, Xerox salesman, 2-time bankrupt entrepreneur, homeless at 38, multi-millionaire by 47. But here's what makes Robert Kiyosaki different. He's not a financial advisor. He's not an economist. He never finished his MBA. He's a guy who went broke, figured out why, and then told 40 million people what he learned. And the lesson was uncomfortable. He said your house is not an asset. He said school teaches you to be an employee, not an owner. He said the rich don't work for money. Money works for them. Kiyosaki once said, it's not how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. Half the financial world thinks he's a genius, the other half thinks he's a fraud. Here are 5 lessons from a man who turned being broke into the most successful financial education brand on the planet.
Lesson 1. The tuition nobody sells. In 1977, Robert Kiyosaki started a company called Rippers. It made nylon and Velcro surfer-style wallets. They were the first of their kind. Newsweek featured them. Runner's World featured them. Success Magazine put them on the page. The company went bankrupt. Overseas competition crushed him. He hadn't protected his intellectual property. He lost everything. So he started again. This time, a company licensing t-shirts for heavy metal rock bands like Motley Crue. It worked for a while. Then the music trend shifted. That company went bankrupt too. By 1985, Kiyosaki was living in the back of an old Toyota with his girlfriend Kim. No income, no business, no plan. He was 38 years old. Most people would have gone back to a safe job. Kiyosaki had worked at Xerox. He could sell. He had a degree from the Merchant Marine Academy. He had options, but he didn't go back. He said later, I had to figure out how to give before I received. The more I focus on giving, for less and less, the more and more I make. He started teaching. First at seminars about entrepreneurship, then to larger audiences, then to tens of thousands. 12 years after sleeping in his car, he published Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The lesson: failure is not the opposite of success, it's the cost of it. Most people treat bankruptcy like a death sentence. Kiyosaki treated it like a semester, an expensive one, but a semester. Write down every financial mistake you've made in the last 5 years, not to feel bad about it, to extract the lesson. If you can't find the lesson, you pay the tuition for nothing.
Lesson 2. 2 fathers, 1 lesson. The entire foundation of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a comparison between 2 men. Kiyosaki's biological father, Ralph, was brilliant. He had a PhD in education. He was appointed superintendent of schools for the state of Hawaii. He ran for lieutenant governor. He was respected, educated, and accomplished. He died broke. After losing the election, Ralph lost his government job. He used his savings to buy an ice cream franchise. It failed. He spent his last years working for labor unions, struggling financially until the end. Kiyosaki's rich dad, the father of his best friend Mike, was the opposite. He dropped out of school at 13. He started businesses. He bought real estate. He built an empire of hotels and investments across Hawaii. He became one of the wealthiest men on the island. 2 men, similar incomes at the start, completely opposite results. The difference, according to Kiyosaki, was simple. Poor dad worked for money. Rich dad made money work for him. Poor dad said, study hard so you can find a good company to work for. Rich dad said, study hard so you can find a good company to buy. Kiyosaki said, the single most powerful asset we all have is our mind. If it is trained well, it can create enormous wealth in what seems to be an instant. The lesson? Education doesn't equal financial intelligence. You can have a PhD and die broke. You can drop out at 13 and build an empire. The difference isn't intelligence, it's what you were taught about money, and most people were taught nothing. Ask yourself one question: who taught you about money? If the answer is nobody or school, you already know why you're struggling. Start learning, not from a classroom, from people who have built what you want to build.
Lesson 3. Nobody wanted the book. In 1997, Rich Dad Poor Dad didn't exist as a real book. Kiyosaki wrote it with his business partner Sharon Lechter. They sent it to publishers. Every major house rejected it. The concept was too unconventional, too anti-establishment, too risky. So Kiyosaki self-published it. He printed copies and sold them at his seminars. He handed them out to anyone who would take one. He worked the phones, the radio shows, the small events. Barnes & Noble initially refused to stock it. Bookstores didn't know where to shelve it. Was it self-help, finance, memoir? Nobody could categorize it, so nobody wanted to carry it. Then Oprah happened. In 2000, Kiyosaki appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show. The book exploded. Warner Books picked it up commercially. It hit the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for over 6 years. Will Smith later said he taught his son about financial independence by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. PBS gave Kiyosaki an award for excellence in education. Amazon inducted him into their Hall of Fame as a top 25 author. 40 million copies, 51 languages, 109 countries. From a book every publisher in America said no to. Kiyosaki said, "The most successful people in life are the ones who ask questions. They're always learning, they're always growing, they're always pushing." The lesson? Rejection is not a verdict, it's a filter. Every publisher who said no was applying their own rules to someone who didn't play by the rules. Kiyosaki didn't convince them they were wrong, he made them irrelevant. If you have something you believe in and the gatekeepers say no, stop waiting for permission. Build the thing yourself. The market doesn't care who published it, the market cares whether it's useful.
Lesson 4. Your house is not an asset. This is the sentence that made people hate Robert Kiyosaki. In Rich Dad Poor Dad, he wrote that your home is not an asset, it's a liability. Because an asset puts money in your pocket, a liability takes money out. Your house takes money out. Mortgage, property tax, insurance, maintenance, it costs you money every month just to keep it. People lost their minds. Financial advisors called him irresponsible. Homeowners called him crazy. The entire real estate industry said he didn't know what he was talking about. Then 2008 happened. Millions of Americans discovered that their homes were in fact liabilities. Homes they couldn't sell, mortgages they couldn't pay, equity that vanished overnight. Kiyosaki had been saying it for a decade. Nobody wanted to hear it. His framework was brutally simple. If it puts money in your pocket every month, it's an asset. Rental properties, businesses, stocks that pay dividends, royalties. If it takes money out of your pocket every month, it's a liability. Your car, your house, your credit card debt. Most people spend their lives buying liabilities they think are assets. That's the trap. Kiyosaki said, "The rich buy assets, the poor only have expenses. The middle class buy liabilities they think are assets." The lesson, the vocabulary of money matters. If you can't tell the difference between an asset and a liability, you will spend your life building a pile of things that drain you while thinking you're getting ahead. Take 10 minutes today. List everything you own. Put 2 columns. Puts money in my pocket and takes money out. Look at the ratio. If the second column is longer, you now know exactly what to fix.
Lesson 5. 1 billion in debt on purpose. In January 2024, Robert Kiyosaki said publicly that he owes more than $1 billion. 1 billion with a B. His exact words, "If I go bust, the bank goes bust, not my problem." People were outraged. How can the guy who teaches financial education be $1 billion in debt? Because that's the lesson. Kiyosaki separates debt into 2 categories. Bad debt is borrowing money to buy things that lose value, a car, a vacation, consumer goods. Good debt is borrowing money to buy assets that generate income, real estate, businesses, cash-flowing investments. His billion in debt is backed by real estate, apartment complexes, hotels, golf courses, properties that generate millions in monthly income, tax-free, while the debt itself provides tax advantages. The banks aren't nervous, they're partners. In 2012, his company Rich Global LLC filed for bankruptcy after being ordered to pay $24 million to the Learning Annex. People said it was proof he was a fraud, but Rich Global was one of at least 10 companies Kiyosaki operated. His personal net worth remained around $100 million. The bankruptcy was a business structure, not a personal collapse. Kiyosaki said, "The philosophy of the rich and the poor is this: the rich invest their money and spend what is left. The poor spend their money and invest what is left. The lesson: Debt is a tool. Like a hammer, it can build a house or break a window. Most people only know how to break windows. Kiyosaki learned how to build houses. The distinction between good debt and bad debt is the most important financial concept most people never learn. Before your next purchase, ask one question. Is this putting money in my pocket or taking it out? That one question, asked consistently, will change your financial life more than any salary increase.
Now, some things you probably don't know about Robert Kiyosaki. First, his sister is a Buddhist nun ordained by the Dalai Lama. While Robert was flying combat helicopters in Vietnam, his sister Emmy was wandering through hippie communes in Haight-Ashbury. He became a multi-millionaire teaching people about money. She became the venerable Tenzin Kacho, teaching people about the spirit. They wrote a book together called Rich Brother, Rich Sister. When Robert took his wife Kim to see the Dalai Lama in Los Angeles, it was his sister who walked out on stage to introduce His Holiness. They had front row seats next to Sharon Stone and Richard Gere. Robert later admitted, "That day, for the first time, I had a glimpse of who my younger sister really was." Second, he was a helicopter gunship pilot in Vietnam. At 14 years old, he walked into a Marine recruiter's office and asked to sign up. They told him to come back later. 8 years later, he was flying combat missions and was awarded the Air Medal. His parents were anti-war Peace Corps volunteers. They were horrified. Third, the son of Hawaii's superintendent of education almost got expelled from high school. Robert's grades were so bad at Hilo High School that he nearly didn't graduate. His father, Ralph Kiyosaki, was literally the head of education for the entire state. The irony is not lost on anyone. Robert later wrote a book called If You Want to Be Rich and Happy, Don't Go to School. Fourth, he created a board game before the book. CASHFLOW 101 is a financial education game he designed with his wife Kim. Think of it as Monopoly for adults who want to escape what Kiyosaki calls the rat race. The game came first, the book came second. Today, there are over 2,100 independent cash flow clubs around the world that meet regularly to play. The game funded the first print run of Rich Dad Poor Dad. Fifth, Will Smith said he taught his son about financial independence by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad to him. PBS gave Kiyosaki an award for excellence in education. The same man every publisher in America rejected is now required reading in financial literacy programs across dozens of countries. That's Robert Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki didn't become the most read financial author in history because he had a perfect track record. He became one because he had the worst track record imaginable and still figured it out. He paid the tuition nobody sells, going bankrupt twice and sleeping in his car before learning what no school would teach him. He learned from two fathers that education and financial intelligence are not the same thing, and that the wrong advice from the right people can ruin your life. He took a book nobody wanted, self-published it, and turned rejection into 40 million copies. He told people their house is not an asset, got attacked for it, and then watched the 2008 crisis prove him right. And he borrowed $1 billion on purpose because he learned the difference between debt that destroys and debt that builds. Kiyosaki once said, "In the real world, the smartest people are people who make mistakes and learn. In school, the smartest people don't make mistakes." That's the lesson. You will go broke, maybe financially, maybe emotionally, maybe both. The question isn't whether it will happen, it's whether you'll treat it as a funeral or a classroom. If you want to go deeper, I recommend the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, the #1 personal finance book of all time. Also read Rich Brother, Rich Sister, the book he wrote with his sister Tenzin Kacho, a Buddhist nun. One chased money, the other chased God. Both found what they were looking for. Check the description for the original sources. Subscribe if you know that being broke is not the same as being finished.